Hi, so I'm Martin, and I'm a second year at Columbia studying economics mathematics. Today I'll be talking about the basics of transfer admissions because it's a pretty niche topic, and there's not a lot of information online readily available. So this video will be perfect for you if you aren't satisfied with your results from your first year admissions and you would like to try again, or if you just don't feel like you're fitting in or the academic programs aren't just up to par to your expectations. So let me give a quick overview of transferring and when you can transfer. So generally, people apply for transferring either in their first year of college or their second year of college. Usually as a college junior, you cannot transfer. And when you apply for transfer, you're generally transferring for the next academic year. For freshman admissions, results may come out in March, and then you commit by May. Transfer applications is on a bit more delayed timeline. You submit your application in March, and then you get your results by May, and then you commit by June for the next academic term. So, for example, if you're currently a first year or a freshman, you can apply March second semester of your freshman year for sophomore entry, and we call those people sophomore transfers. So logically, it makes most sense to discuss what the most important factors for transferring are next. First and foremost, the absolutely most important factor are your stats, more so than first year admissions, I would say, because for transfer admissions, the college GPA is absolutely the most important thing. If you're below a certain threshold, your application might not even be read. You might be wondering, okay, so college GPA is the most important thing. What about high school GPA? And this is where the matter of sophomore versus junior transfer comes in. If you're a sophomore transfer, you're only going to have one semester worth of college grades by the time you apply for transferring. So your high school track record, so your high school GPA will matter. If you're a junior transfer, then more weight will be placed onto your college GPA. So what are the thresholds, or what are the general recommended college GPAs to get? You generally want to have a 3.8 plus GPA, ideally 3.9 plus college GPA for schools in between the top 10 to top 20. So I'm talking about schools like WashU, USC, Emory, Vanderbilt, those type of schools. Another factor that's very important is extracurriculars. And like first year admissions, extracurriculars is what distinguishes you from other candidates. The only difference now is that with college, now that you've graduated high school, you have a wider access to opportunities. So you can do things you're passionate about, look for internship or relevant work experience. So examples of that might be, creating a social justice project that has had a tangible impact, being published in a reputable academic journal, being a military veteran, which is one of the best extracurriculars you could have, or starting a business that generates 6 to 7 figures of revenue every single year. And the reason for why you need such impressive extracurriculars is because in high school, maybe you might not have had access to the resources that enable you to have great extracurriculars. Now that you're in college, now that you're an adult, there's really no excuse for you not to take the initiative to look for campus extracurriculars, have a leadership position in a club. And if not, you can always find work or internship or projects outside of your current school. Of course, there are also essays. And this one is a bit more complicated than first year admissions, because in first year admissions, you're just trying to pitch yourself to the admissions officers. You want the admissions officers to like you. You're doing this, trying to do the same thing in transfer applications, but at the same time, you're trying to also articulate why you want to transfer. If you don't have a solid reason for transferring, why should admissions officers take you? And so everyone has their reasons, right? There are just some reasons you can't say in your essays. Like you can't say, I want to transfer into an Ivy League college, or I want to transfer because it's more prestigious. You have to come up with, academic reasons, personal reasons. You could say, my financial aid in my current college isn't good enough, or my major or program of study that I want to take isn't offered in my current college. Either way, you have to articulate why you want to transfer clearly, and you have to talk about why, transferring will benefit you, what you can bring to the college as well, being a current college student, being more experienced than a first year student. Talk about your journey, in life, why you chose your current college and why it's time to make that change. Obviously, you can't be, talking badly about your old school, but you should mention why, it's not directly for you, and why it's time for you to move on and transfer elsewhere. Additionally, similarly to first year admissions, you also need letters of recommendations. And these letters of recommendations will come from your professors, who are, world-renowned, academics. This is why the weight of these letter of recommendations is more important. And most of the time, you need two letter of recommendations from your professors that has taught you. If you can't get a letter of recommendation from a professor, you can get a teaching assistant to do one for you. Most of the time, it's just recommended that you get an actual professor because the weight of those recommendation letters are much greater. The quality matters a lot as well. You'll want to choose professors that will give you the best possible recommendation letter. So let's say, for example, you're a computer science major. You might think, oh, I need to get a computer science professor to write me a letter of recommendation. No. The quality is what matters the most. So if you happen to know your literature professor better and your literature professor happens to know you better as well, it's generally recommended that you ask for the literature professor's recommendation instead. As for how you can foster relationships with professors, because let's be honest, most of the time in college, you're going to be in a large lecture class, 100 to 200 people all in the same class. There's no guarantee that the professor will even know your name by the end of the semester. What you should be doing is you should be going to their office hours, you should be asking questions during class, raising interesting questions, and getting to know the professor while the professor gets to know you. You just have to show that you're actively engaged, and you basically just want them to know your name. So what I did was I got two recommendation letters, one from my chemistry professor, one from my anthropology professor. For my chemistry professor, I went to her office hours pretty much every single week. She also held coffee chats, so I would get to know inside and outside of the classroom. I was also in her small lecture class for general chemistry, and I was also in her first year seminar on chemical research. So she ended up knowing me very, very well, and she probably delivered me my best letter of recommendation. My second letter of recommendation was from my anthropology professor. While she didn't know me as well, I still actively tried to foster a relationship between us. So I'd go to office hours, talk about questions I had from that week's reading, and I'd also be sure to participate in our small discussion sections so that she can understand how I was as a thinker and as an academic. Standardized test scores are also a factor in the transfer admissions process, but probably less so because standardized test scores are used to predict college performance, but once that you're actually in college, what's the need to predict college performance, right? So generally it's just to check off a box. I think they matter less if you're a junior transfer because you have a more longer college track record. Lastly, like first year admissions, this process is completely random. There's a lot about luck, and there's also weirdly school preferences. Certain schools want to build their transfer classes certain ways to increase diversity. For example, Princeton will pretty much only take military veterans or community college transfers. Same thing with Stanford. They love their California community college transfers. So pretty much off the bat, there's just factors that you can't control. As for, questions about can you apply as a transfer if you already applied as a freshman? Of course. This is a completely new process. You can basically reinvent yourself as a transfer applicant given the many opportunities you can have in college. As long as your old application didn't have anything crazy or extremely damaging like racism or sexism, you should present yourself in the best light for transfer applications. And it's a completely new cycle. It's a completely new chance for you to get into your dream school. So yeah, today I went over the basics of transferring. It's a very hard process because there's not a lot of internet resources on this. Personally, I also found it really hard trying to balance the workload of preparing for applications, writing essays, because for first year admissions, since the deadlines for a regular decision are due in December, you can spend your winter break working on essays. But for transfer admissions, you have to basically experience one semester of college before you can write about your experience and why you want to transfer. So most of the time when you're working on essays that are due in March, you'll be working on essays and trying to juggle schoolwork and extracurricular work at the same time. Now I'm here as a resource, and if you have any other questions, just feel free to reach out to me. Thank you so much.